What is up? You can't see me because I forgot to check on this. 1 second. Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. OBS messes up every time I unplug my computer. What up? Oh my gosh. I'm in space. Hello, everyone. My name is Kenzie Dodds, and I'm super excited to be here with you all talking about Epic React. It's going to be so epic. I'm so excited about this. So this is the first of many live streams that I'm going to be doing in preparation for Epic React's launch. Holy mackerel, we have 130 people watching. That's exciting. So yeah, cool stuff. Let me just give you a rundown of what's going to happen here. So epicreact.dev is going to be released a week from tomorrow at 10 a.m. my time. I really can't wait. And if you can't wait also, then I sent an email to all the subscribers this morning with a link to a calendar event that you could add to your calendar. If you didn't get that email, then make sure to subscribe on epicreact.dev so that you get those emails. And another thing, the chat is going to be disabled for all of my live streams, and mostly because YouTube is not very good at keeping people civil. And so instead I use Discord. And so let me just share my screen here really quick. Here's Discord. It's awesome. Take a look at or go ahead and join the Discord. There's a link in the description. And we're going to be chatting it up here in Epic React. So if I share any links or anything, that's going to go right here. And I'm going to share a link right now, actually. So today we're talking about patterns, and you can go take a look at these slides. I've given this talk before, so if you've seen this talk, then this will be very familiar to you. But I'm basically going to sort of give this talk in a relatively off-the-cuff manner. Yeah, and then I will have this, yeah, you can see yourself. What up? I'll answer questions here in the Discord chat. I'll just move this over here so I can see that. And feel free to ask any questions that you've got. And this is pretty informal. Let me get rid of a couple of these tabs here. Probably should have gotten that all set up. I've been doing a lot of fun stuff recently. I'm going to move this over here also. Just have that on off to the side right there. Okay, sweet. So good times. Definitely get yourself on the Discord. Holy moly. Take a look at this. So when you join the Discord, you get a special channel just for you. And I think we might be getting close to our limit of 50. So if we are, I'm going to have to start deleting people who haven't talked to the bot for a second. So let me just check that out really quick. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Okay, so we're not quite to 50, but I think we're getting pretty close. So I need to write this into the bot. Yeah, we need to delete some of these channels so that people can still join. So I'm gonna delete some where we haven't had people chat for a little bit. So that people don't join. And then I'm going to update the bot so that it can handle this sort of thing for me and say, hey, you're going to get deleted. You need to answer these questions right now. It deletes after a half hour of inactivity. But I think I need to decrease that amount of time for situations like this where I've got tons of people joining all at once. So I apologize for that. Let me just do this really quick and get this done. And then we can rock and roll there. Oh man, there's just a lot of people. It's not like you haven't been chatting. Oh, okay. Well, if it doesn't work for you right away, I'm sorry. Come back later when it's not so busy. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Simply React. And actually, let me move this over here so I can make sure that I'm still streaming and everything's working. And I'm going to have the Epic React channel open in Discord. So if you do have questions or anything, feel free to comment in here. Early bird. By early bird, I mean, so Lean just asked what the early bird's all about. We don't have an early bird. I'm not going to be doing an early before the a pre-sale or anything, but we technically have an early bird discount for if you are one of the first people to get it, or if you get a license in the first 24 hours. So the way that this is going to work is we have the first 24 hours is going to be a really big discount, like huge discount. And then the next 24 hours will be a really great discount. And then the rest of the next until the sale's over, which we're still kind of deciding when it's going to end. But it'll be just a nice discount. So you'll want to get it earlier if you want to get the bigger discount. And with that in mind, tell your friends, because they're going to be like, what? There was an awesome discount? You didn't tell me? What kind of friend are you? Okay, so let's talk about some patterns. It's going to be great. And like I said, this is a talk that I've given more like formally and professionally, and you can find this on my talks page, which I will link in Discord. So if you go to Simply React, you can see I've given it many times. I would just look at this one, the most recent time, and take a look at a more formal presentation of this talk. So, oh, and one other thing you can't see, but right there, Epic React Dev is great. Okay, cool. So this is a typical lifecycle of components, not the component lifecycle, but lifecycle of components. How we can, how patterns can simplify our lives, and how we can use composability. And I want to give you a challenge. This is not how to implement the patterns. That's what I'm going to teach you in Epic React. So look forward to that. So this is the typical life of a component. I'm going to bump this up a little bit. Here is an accordion. I can click on things, I can expand them, and it's cool. I like that. So if you were tasked to build this sort of thing, you'd probably build it like this. You'd say, here's my accordion, here are my items. I have literally built an accordion with this API. And the accordion items would have something for like what the contents for the button should be, and then the contents of the tab, or of the accordion contents itself, right? So it's pretty standard. Like, we do stuff like this all the time. So let's say that you built this, and then somebody comes to you, comes by your desk, and they're like, hey, yo, that's a cool accordion you got there. Is there any chance we can make it so that the contents appear above? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. Just an if statement inside of my render method. No problem. No big deal. And so you do that, and you just say above is true. All right. So if above this dot props that above is true, then we're going to render it above. Cool. So then somebody else comes to you and says, hey, I noticed that you were able to change it. Can you change it to render to the side? You say, yeah, just another if statement. We'll do right is true. And you're like, wow, just if statements. Starting to look not awesome. And somebody's like, I want it on the right side. You're like, okay, another if statement, I guess. This one's going to be left is true. And then you're like, oh no, I have a right is true and a left is true. What if I have both of those? Which one's going to win? So you change it because you're a thinker. And you're like, no, we're going to do an enum. Impossible states, we don't want impossible states. That's a bad idea. So we're going to make our position left. Okay, cool. All right, so that's going to work. And we've got like CSS grid implemented and stuff to make this as easy as possible. But yeah, it's still like our render method's looking kind of dirty. And then somebody comes to you and says, hey, I liked your accordion the way it was. Like, it works fine for me, except I want one difference. I only want to have one accordion open at a time. Okay? So like, I can close them all if I want to, but I can't open more than one at once. Can we do that? And you're like, okay, yeah, cool. I don't have to change my render method anymore. So that's good. I just have to change how the mechanism I use for updating the state. So I just say if, I don't know, this.props.single, then we'll just make sure to set the state so that there's only one open index. Okay, so that'll work. And then somebody says, hey, I am actually okay with having multiple open at once. My problem is I don't want to be able to close all of them. So you have to have one open at all times. Okay, so like, that's another if statement in the way I update my state, I guess. And now we're going to have a prevent close is true. And then somebody says, hey, I want both of those behaviors. I can't close it, but I can't open more than one. And you're like, oh, that's actually easy. Now you just provide both props and it'll just work. The way that I implemented it, I didn't really think of this, but yeah, that totally works. So great. And then somebody sees that, they see this and they're like, There's only one open at a time. You can't close one. So I'm building a tabs UI. That's basically what a tabs UI is. Just there's a button. When you click on it, it shows some contents. And when you click on another one, it shows that one's contents and it hides the other one. You can't have more than one open at a time. You can't close them all. So that's tabs. Can we turn this thing into a tabs component? You're like, no. And they say, no, look, you just add a tabs thing. And in your render function, you just say, if this.props.tabs, then render with the tabs UI. And if otherwise, just render everything else that you were already doing. It's just an if statement. You're like, nope, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. Don't make me do it. I hate this. I'm crying and we're sad. And then somebody says, no, it'll be fine. And so you do it. And then they come around and say, hey, can we actually render those tabs above instead? And you're like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I hate this. And so they make a tabs component. They just copy paste everything, make a tabs component. And now you have two problems. So this is like a path to sadness, very common sort of steps of things that happen, right? So like it's really just a common thing to have people pile on abstractions onto an existing abstraction. And I have another talk about abstraction that you might want to take a look at sometime. It's kind of interesting. It's AHA programming. I gave it most recently at React Summit. Really interesting kind of stuff in here. So let me just copy that right there. And actually, another one that's sort of related is this, well, very tangentially, but consume, build, teach. That's coming up for React Summit in October. That one will be kind of interesting too. Yeah, in general, abstraction is something that kind of exists for itself, and it's really easy to get wrong. As things just are thoughtlessly added as you build upon itself. And abstraction also can make it really difficult to maintain a code base in the long term. So we can extrapolate this. We can actually take it further. And this is the way that it has gone for me, is you have the accordion items, but and you have the title and the contents, but then you also like, well, I want the title to be different if it's open. I want it to be disabled. I want it to be like infinity other things, and then maybe the props all change. You're like, I want it to open on trigger and I want it to close on blur, and here I want to style it differently, so I want to apply a class name to the title, and whenever one is opened or closed or any trigger at all, I want it to like do analytics, or there are so many things that you can do and that you do with this stuff. And there's one component in particular that took the cake when I was looking for, okay, what's the most number of props that anybody's ever made? And it was like 110 props. Yeah, I can't even imagine dealing with that. And like, not only, yeah, there are just so many problems with that. Let's talk about some of those problems. So first off, the bundle size. It's going to be huge. Like even just the names of those props is going to add like an insignificant or a significant amount to the bundle size, both on the receiving end for the component that's implemented that, and on the giving end for the component that's going to hand those props off. So that's not cool. Maintenance overhead for the maintainers, like, yeah, people are going to, as this abstraction becomes more useful, more people are going to want to contribute to it, but it becomes more difficult to do so because there's so much logic and stuff that this thing can do. And so the contributors that you do get are often people who are just drive-by contributors. They're like, I don't want to touch it. I just want to make it do this thing. So yeah, that's not cool. And it makes things really difficult to maintain in the long term. The implementation gets more complex, especially as people are drive-by contributing. They don't really have an understanding of everything that's going on. And so they're going to complete the implementation due to their lack of understanding. So that's difficult. That's not fun. And I'm seeing some people chatting in here talking about render props and stuff. Don't worry, your time will come. We're getting there. 135 props. We only need one component. Yeah, that's true. But you have to learn that component. And that API gets pretty complex. 135 components with one prop. Yeah, you could do that too. The API just gets super complicated. And then you have to document that, right? And your users have to learn that API. Such a nightmare. It's really difficult. So like these monolithic components become real problems. And they may be able to do everything for everyone, but it brings, like, you wanted the banana, you get the whole gorilla and the jungle. Like, you bring along the entire everything that can be done when you have this type of complexity. Yeah, it would be cool if there was a way we could avoid this. So everybody's sad. We're all crying our eyes out because we have this thing that nobody wants to touch. It's really complex. How do we deal with this? Apocalypse. That, as Jen Creighton put it. I love that. It's hilarious. So how do we avoid the apocalypse? So what if I told you that the component that, like, it's actually a component. It's running. This thing works. It's running in the browser. What if I told you that that component, all of those examples, were all based on the same 22-line hook? Just one 22-line hook that powered all of that. So this is it. Bum-ba-da-dum. So the hook itself is actually pretty small. It's the reducer that takes most of the logic. And yeah, and then we have our action types, and we export those things. And that's all. That's all of the logic behind our all of those abstractions. So that's cool. Do you want to take a look at this? Let's take a look at this. We've got a demo in Code Sandbox, and just to save you a couple clicks, I'll paste this in our Discord, so you can take a look at that if you want to, like, look at it directly yourself. But yeah, this is it. We've got a lib here that has some emotion components and different things like that, but most of our time is spent here in the index.js. So here it is. Bum-ba-da-dum. Our working accordion component that can be used as a tabs. So we're going to pretend that these are different files in your project. We have a use accordion right here. This is going to be exporting some stuff. Then we have our app. And then we also have our use tabs right here, which presumably would be in another file. So this is what's so cool about hooks. I gave this talk before hooks were a thing. And at that time, it was, let's talk about render props and higher order components and all this cool stuff. But as cool as that was, excuse me. Okay, we're streaming again. Hopefully this is going to work. I am honestly not surprised. OBS dies all the time. Okay, we're back. Okay, so we should be good. Sorry about that. That's why I kept the OBS window open right here so I could see it. There we go. Okay, we're good. Sorry about that little brief interruption. So yeah, back in the day, we used to do a lot of higher order components, render props, all that stuff. But now we have hooks as, like, just the perfect little atom that we can apply as an abstraction layer, and it just made all of this stuff way easier. So yeah, cool. I'm glad that this talk brought me to your attention. It's a fun talk. So let's dive in. Let's see what this does, and then you can feel free to ask any questions or anything that you might have. So let's start with the use accordion. Actually, let's back up from the abstraction, and we'll go to where it's used first. So here's our accordion component. Here's one of the cool things about composition and abstraction is that we can build things out of these small Lego blocks, and then we can go back to the API that we had before, which we really liked. Like, it was a fine API. There was nothing wrong with this API, especially like this first one. I liked this API. Like, it was really quite simple. I just have a accordion component. I have my items, and here's how those items are implemented in here. The title and the contents. And then if somebody had, like, some additional customization, then we can do things a little bit differently. So we can provide that nice API for them from the start, and then we can give it a little bit more customization if needed, without having to make our underlying accordion implementation any more complex. So this is what that typical life cycle again. So here we have this accordion. It has items. We're accepting a reducer, and I'll talk about that state reducer here in a little bit. We're using this use accordion. It's taking that reducer. It's calling combine reducers, which is not the thing from Redux. It's just a little function I can show you here in a second. It's a different thing. And then we're returning a div, and we're mapping over those items. We're rendering an accordion item. There's nothing really special about that. It's just a styled component with emotion. It has a direction prop. And then we have our accordion button and accordion contents, also just styled components, no logic with those. Okay, cool. So use accordion is managing our state. We can toggle an index. We have our open indexes, so we can determine whether accordion should be considered open based on whether the open indexes includes the index of our item. Okay, so with all of that backdrop, let's walk through this whole process or this life cycle of a component now. So we start out with this component. It's awesome. We love it. We can open multiple items. We can close them all. It's great. And somebody comes around and they say, hey, I want to be able to render things on the right. And you say, okay, you're going to take this component, this like 20 lines of a component, you're going to copy it, and you're going to just move this over to the other side. Okay. And then we're going, or sorry, I was doing it the opposite way. So you're going to, oh, right. Yeah, that's right. I've got myself all mixed up. So yeah, we want it to render the buttons below. That's the use case. So you're going to copy this, you're going to move those buttons to be below, and instead of having a down finger, we're going to have an point up finger. There we go. Okay, so, and that's it. Bum-ba-da-dum. It totally works. And I didn't have to change my abstraction at all, not even a little bit. I just said, hey, why don't you just use the same building blocks that I use for this accordion, and like this is a declarative API. There's not a whole lot you really have to do here. You just move things around, and you're good. You're off to the races. And then somebody comes around and says, hey, that's cool. Here, let's go over here so we can follow along with that process. So instead of having accordion with above is true, like maybe you could do that. You could actually still compose things together, and you'd have one that has it above and the other that has it below. I wouldn't recommend that. It's a violation of the AHA programming principle, but you could do that. That's the cool thing about composition. But in essence, we're using the same building blocks to create this experience. And that's what makes this so powerful. So then somebody comes around and says, hey, I want it to be on the right. And so you're like, okay, cool. We're using CSS grid, so we can just say vertical. Instead of vertical, it'll be horizontal. And then now it's rendered over on the right there. So we'll just move this over. And instead of pointing up, we're going to be pointing to the right. And there we go. We're off to the races. Bum-ba-da-dum. Cool. And then somebody says, I want it on the left. And you say, just copy paste this again and move this one over to that side. And then we're going to want to put these, change the direction those fingers are pointing. There we go. And boom. Solid, right? We're pretty good. Feeling pretty good about that, right? So let me just answer a question Jonathan just asked here. This looks clean and good, but what about in a professional context where team members might not have the same skill? It is objectively better, but more abstract. The one with a lot of props might be bad to maintain, but it's easier to understand. I would argue against that. I don't think that using the building, like you can, this is the cool thing, is that you can build these little building blocks, and then like this hook, and we'll dive into the hook here in a little bit. You can build these building blocks, and then if you have a junior developer and they're like, I don't know how to do this thing, well, really it is just a matter of copy paste and move things around. And if they really are just that junior, they can't figure that out, that's fine. You can help them with that, and you can do the copy and paste. Or you can build your monster component out of these building blocks. And the nice thing about that is the only thing that will be complex is the monster component that composes these things together. And if anybody wants to do something slightly different that doesn't really fit the monster component, they don't have to change the monster component. They could go ahead and build their own little implementation out of these building blocks. And that's why this is way better. And I've done and experienced this at scale at PayPal, and that was my experience. It was just so much better for everybody, even the newbies. Okay, so anyway, we can use this same stuff for our tabs. So here I'm going to make a use tabs, and yeah, Horacio said, or buy Epic React, and that's it. Yeah, there you go. You have some juniors, have them buy Epic React, and then they'll be like professionals. It'll be awesome. And yes, Christos just said, many props leads to complex render methods. Yes, avoid that. Okay, cool. So here we have use tabs. it's just composing use Accordion, and it's providing its own custom reducer function here. So we have this prevent close and single reducer and Accordion Reducer. Actually, I jumped the gun a little bit. We're skipping ahead. So sorry, let me back up. So we move things around, and now we just want to be able to open one at a time. So how would we accomplish this with our current implementation? So let's come back up here. We'll undo a bunch of stuff. Okay, so we're back to square one, and they're like, hey, I just want to be able to make it so you can't have more than one open at a time. Okay, so this is where the reducers thing comes in. So what you do is you say, actually, you don't need to copy the accordion at all, because the accordion component is really just responsible for rendering stuff. But it accepts a prop called a reducer that allows you to customize the way that this thing operates. And I'll show you how this all works here in just a second. Just want to show you the API first. So if we go to our accordion here, we're going to say the reducer is going to be our single reducer. So this is going to just make sure that the state can only have one open at a time. So that's nice and easy. This is called inversion of control, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So that, yeah, nice and easy. Don't have to add any logic or whatever. And that single reducer function is really simple. So you'll see that here in a second. It's not like some magical something. Sorry, OBS died again. Okay, sorry about that. Man, yeah, if I'm going to do much more of this, I've streamed with OBS in the past. There must be something wrong with the latest version or something like that. But I'll dig into it, and hopefully we don't have this problem in the future. So sorry about that. Okay, so I was just showing the reducers. I don't remember exactly when it all failed, so sorry about that. I'll back it up to the single reducer. So single reducer. So this is a simple function that I'll show you here in a little bit that allows us to control the way that the state updates are happening. It's called a state reducer. And so this allows me to only have one of these open at a time because it's controlling how the state management happens. And yes, you paid good money for this. Yes, I will issue you an immediate refund for all of the money that you paid. Yeah, I'm using normal OBS or Rossio, so I'm not sure why. Maybe Streamlabs is better somehow. I'm not sure. Yeah, so we're inverting control, giving people control over the way that the state is managed. And that takes care of our single reducer. And then we have one for our prevent close reducer. And so this is basically the same concept, except now I can't close down to beyond just the one. Okay. And then we have the special combine reducers function where I can give it my single reducer and my prevent close reducer. And I'll show you all of this here in just a second. I just want you to see what's possible. And this puts those two together, so I can't close this anymore. And this is what our tabs UI is. So we just need to change what the UI looks like. And this is where like the Lego blocks really like, whoa, that's awesome. So now for tabs UI, you say, no, I'm not going to change my function, my render function for you at all. You're just going to copy this and you'll use the same hook that I'm using. You just combine your reducers. So here we're going to combine the reducer with, maybe they want to provide their own reducer, and then the prevent close, the single, and then the accordion reducer. So we just put them all together so it operates on the state appropriately. So then we have our tabs UI. So let me grab the tabs. We'll swap our accordion for tabs. Let's get rid of that reducer. And now it's just a matter of changing what the UI is. And all of the state management is handled within the hook. It's like uber simple. And it's just magic, honestly. It's awesome. All working with that same 22 lines of hook and reducer. So yeah, it's awesome. It is fantastic. So you ready to dive in? I think I'm ready to dive in. Let's figure out like, how does this magic stuff work? So let's take a look at the use accordion first. So use accordion is using a React use reducer. Here's the reducer, and then the state itself is an array of the indexes. So this is the open indexes. We have a dispatch, and the only type that we support, so we maybe don't need a have a reducer for this, or don't need to have the typical like Redux style reducer. But the only dispatch supported type is toggle index. You could have like an open index or a close index or something if you wanted to as well. But that's going to be part of our action types, so we don't have to use strings everywhere. We just have action types here like this. I just noticed a quick question. I'll pause really quick. Or two questions from Mark. How would you go about using the same accordion component in another part of the app that only had minor CSS changes? So if it's really just CSS changes, then you just apply different class names potentially. Or, like for all abstraction, the first thing that you do is you copy and paste. Seriously, like I know everybody is all over this dry thing, but it is so much easier to start by copy pasting. And not just easier, because easy is like, who cares about easy? It will make sure that you don't overly complex your code. So start by copy pasting, and then work your way to an abstraction for the shared pieces. So go ahead and take a look at that blog post for more on that. And then another question, where did you learn about these patterns yourself? So most of the patterns that I've learned came from my development of Downshift JS. And I normally mention that at the beginning of my talk, and I just neglected to say that. But yeah, so Downshift is just full of patterns. This is where I invented the state reducer pattern right here. And then there's also control props in here. There's prop getters. That's where I created the prop getter pattern. It's all right in here. It's awesome. So take a look at Downshift. I don't maintain it anymore, but that's where I learned these patterns. I should mention control props. I did not learn from building Downshift. I didn't create control props. I actually learned that from Ryan Florence. Pretty cool trick. And Downshift also uses render prop. The old component does. They have hooks now. But I learned render props from probably, I think I learned it from Ryan. But I first saw it in, yeah, I don't think I learned it from Ryan. Saw it a long time ago for React Spring, I think was the first component that actually used render props. But we don't use render props anymore because we have hooks. So, I mean, render props are still a thing. If you actually are curious, there are use cases for render props with hooks. And I'll give you a link to that also. So if you want to, yeah, there's all kinds of cool things in here. I got a lot of patterns in there. Anyway, and do you recommend to start first as a component with props, and when a new use case appears that is difficult to handle, refactor the component to a component with hooks? Yeah, so like start with as little abstraction as possible. So build the thing that's like exactly perfectly for the thing that you're building, and then maybe no other use cases will come. But if they do, then before you just like hack things together to make it work, I would just copy and paste it. Make changes so that this version works for whatever you're building, and then look at them both and say, oh, there's a lot of similarities here. They are basically exactly similar, just with this one if statement. So maybe I'll make a prop for that. Or there are these like chunks that are similar in them, and so I'll make little Lego blocks out of that. That's how you go about it. Don't try to make the Lego blocks as you're figuring out the new thing that you're building. Just copy paste, and then before you commit it or before you merge it or whatever, just look at it and see, okay, how can I abstract this? So that's how I recommend going about that. And Peter is asking, is everything done in a single file just for learning purposes? Yes. So I would not typically create it this way. And in fact, I even have comments for like, this would be in one file. Here's how I'm exporting that. Here's another file, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we're not talking file structure here today. Okay, anyway, so here's our reducer. And we just determine here we're just toggling it. So we need to know whether we're opening or closing it. So if the current open indexes includes the one that we're trying to toggle, then we're closing. And so if we're closing, then we're going to filter that one out. So we'll return that array with the currently open index filtered out. If we're opening it, so if we're not closing it, then we're going to add it to the currently open indexes. Okay, so it's pretty simple, actually. Like there's not a whole lot of logic right there. Yeah, and it works out quite nicely. So let's take a look at this combine reducers, because and that actually takes care of all of our UI stuff, because this is just The use accordion hook is just the logic. The rest of the UI, like the way it looks and where it appears, that all depends on the implementation. So whoever's using the hook can render things however they want to based on that state. So that's the value proposition of just putting this into a hook. So for the logic piece of it, this is where we get into the state reducer concept. And so here we have this accordion reducer, and this is our default reducer, right? But use accordion actually allows you to provide your own reducer. It just defaults to the accordion reducer, but you can actually provide an entirely different reducer if you wanted to. And so if you wanted to change how we react to this particular action, or anything about the state at all, you can do that by providing your own reducer, which is what we're doing right here. We're providing our own reducer that comes back from this combined reducers thing. So combined reducers will take any number of functions. So it takes all of the reducer functions, and then it returns a new reducer. So a reducer is just a function that takes state and an action, and it returns the new value of the state. So here we're going to return a new reducer, and that reducer, when called, will iterate through the reducers it received and call those reducers with that state and that action. And if it... My goodness, OBS is having a rough day. This is bad. So I will dive in. I have a monster machine, by the way. I took y'all's money from licenses and stuff, and I invested so that this thing wouldn't happen. But I think it might be too hot or something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's OBS actually, because my machine's not running that hot right now. I'm at 17% CPU, 30% memory. So I'm pretty sure there's a bug in OBS. I'll take a look at updating that. So sorry for the interruptions. Okay, so yeah, the way that the reducer works, you call each reducer in order, and the first one to return a result is the one that where we return the result of this combined reducer. Okay, so it's actually pretty good. Horacio, I actually have a PC in my closet for streaming, and I used it for like a year. I hated it so much. I will not go back to that unless like there's no other way, because then you have to have an extra monitor, or I use my extra monitor for that. It is such a pain. So I hate it. I will not do this. But we'll see. Maybe if I can't get this to work, then maybe I'll return to that. I don't know. I hate it. OBS is the only one that has problems. I can stream on Discord or stream through Zoom, no problem. So it's just OBS. So I honestly think I'd rather just stream through Zoom before I use the PC. So we've got a backup. It's just not as cool because I'm like this little figure inside of my screen. I can't do that with Zoom. So anyway, let's get back to this. So we got this combined reducers. Let's take a look at what these reducers actually can do, what they're capable of. So we'll look at the prevent closed one first. So remember, these reducers are exactly have the exact same API as our base reducer right here. So we have this accordion reducer. It takes open indexes and the action, because the open indexes is the state that we're managing. So here, our prevent close reducer is going to take that open indexes and the action, and it really only cares about the toggle index action. So it's going to reference those action types, toggle index. That happens to be the only action that we dispatch, but presumably you'd have multiple, and in downshift we had multiple actions, so we'd key off of that. And so if that's the action that's being performed, then we're going to determine whether or not this is being closed. And if we are closing, if that's the toggle that we're doing, we also need to know whether this is the last one to be closed. So if we have 2 or more, then this isn't the last, and so we're fine. But if we only have one left and we're trying to close it, that's not okay. And so that's what we're determining right here. If we're closing and this is the last one, then we're just going to not do anything. No state update. We'll just return the exact same state. This actually will prevent a re-render as well. And so we're just saying, nope, we're not going to let that happen. Otherwise, we'll just return nothing. Okay, and so that's what where this comes in, where we say, hey, if you return nothing, then we'll just then we just move on to the next reducer. So we're just going to keep on calling reducers until one of them returns some state. So for this single reducer, that's going to take our open indexes and our action. And if it's the toggle, then we're going to determine if we're closing. And if we're not closing, so it's not being closed. So remember, this is the one where you can only have one open at a time. So if we're not closing, that means we're opening. Maybe that's what I should call this. We'll say opening. Right there. Okay, maybe that makes more sense. So if we're opening, then we're going to make sure that our open indexes is an array with a single item, and that's the one that we're opening. And so that's how the single reducer works. And then we use this combined reducers to say, I want prevent close and single reducer logic. And we get those two things together. So that's basically the idea behind the state reducer. This also allows us to take this accordion or take this use accordion and turn it into a use tabs, because we can use that combined reducers to combine user provided reducer along with prevent close, the single reducer, and then the underlying accordion reducer, which is like the last one that would be run after all of these if these decide to not modify the state change. So it's pretty cool, really powerful. When I added this feature to downshift, I got so few issues. Like issues just started to go away because people are like, oh, I just used the state reducer to change the opinions that were made. So yeah, that's pretty rock solid awesome. Let me just wrap this up and then I'll answer any questions that you've got. Right here, just a couple other thoughts that I had. So one thought, Epic React Dev is coming next week in 8 days, about less than 8 days now. And I can't wait. It is going to be awesome. So look forward to that. One other thing, and the reason this is included is because I'm going to teach you about how to implement these things in a exercise format. So you just watch it, you're like, I know it all, right? No. I mean, unless you've already used this, my explanation hopefully just showed you what's possible. You probably would need to reference this material. So yeah, Epic React, I'm going to actually give you exercises so you can actually learn this stuff. It's really cool. You're going to love it. So yeah, just a quick word of caution. We've actually kind of talked about this, but if this is all you ever need, then building things out with all those abstractions, probably a bad idea. Don't do that. You ain't going to need it. So follow that. You want to optimize for deletability because everything will be erased from existence in the future. And so you never know whether the thing that you're building today is actually going to exist tomorrow. And if you spend all of your time abstracting stuff, then maybe you'll abstract yourself out of the job because you're going to lose your company is going to die or something. So just don't, as cool as these patterns are, don't just apply them right away. Wait until you actually need them. Use patterns that simplify your API, state reducers, control props, hook composition, compound components. There are so many things that we can rediscover and make awesome. So do that. Thank you so much. I am totally cool to hang out for the next 15 minutes to answer any questions you've got. And hopefully OBS doesn't make my life sad about that. So again, if you are trying to join the Discord, and that's where I'm going to be answering these questions. So here, I'm going to come over here. So yeah, if you're trying to join the Discord, then I think actually there should be, I think there should be room to do that, even though we've got a bunch open right now. So feel free to join the Discord, and I'm going to be answering questions that are asked right here. So where did oh yeah. Yeah, state reducer. Yeah, that's a good article. Go check it out. Seeing my face. Oh, nice. Ding. Here. Big face. Cool. Where do we declare which reducer to use once you've combined them all? So let's be clear. The way that the reducer stuff works is here, use accordion defaults to the accordion reducer. And actually, if we go back to the very start and we say, here's my accordion, and I'm passing my items, then actually, if this were really all we were building, then we shouldn't have to provide a reducer at all. In fact, we shouldn't even have to provide reducer prop, We don't need to provide this. Like, none of these patterns necessitates doing all of these things this way. This thing still works just fine, just like this. So you don't necessarily have to use the reducer prop or any of that stuff. Those are all just like, somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I've got this use case. You're like, okay, let me add the state reducer really quick. Now you can do your thing. It makes it like we're inverting control. That's the pattern, is inversion of control. And I've got a blog post about that. It's IOC, inversion of control. And let me just give that to you really quick. So yeah, this is where I kind of explain kind of the concept of inversion of control. So yeah, like in answer to the question, where do you declare which user to use once you combine them? We don't actually combine them until we pass them to as the reducer prop or to the reducer option in our hook. So that's where we define it, is when we call that. And then in here, like ultimately when that reducer, and OBS died again. This is no good. I'm gonna have to, maybe I'll use an old version that's stable or something, I don't know. Yeah, so this is where like the reducer that you've combined actually gets into React so that React can deal with it. So hopefully that answers your question. Combined reducer is a bit confusing since it really only returns the first defined state. Yeah, I guess maybe the name is a little confusing. This isn't, this is more a demo to show you what's possible. In Downshift, there's nothing like this. There's no combined reducers thing. This is just like, if you were using this or building this out in your code and you wanted to have some way of combining reducers. I never had a situation where I needed to combine reducers. When I was using Downshift, what more often happened is somebody would come to me, like let's say that we have this example and somebody says, hey, I want to prevent close and I want to have only one open at a time. I would say, well, you make a single reducer that would do both of those things. Combined reducers is just kind of a handy utility that I came up with for this talk. You could, like, if the naming is confusing to you, let's brainstorm another name. It might be better to be like first reducer or something. I'm not sure. But it's sort of, yeah, I can see where there could be a little bit of confusion there. But in reality, in my experience, you typically just pass a single reducer function that does everything that you want it to. So like one thing that you could do is if you only wanted single reducer, then you could say, okay, if all of this, and then otherwise we're going to return the accordion reducer, open indexes and action. And so like that would say, hey, I want to perform my own stuff, but if my own stuff doesn't like match or it's not doing my own thing, then I'm just going to do the default. That would be probably more like real world. And that's actually what I show in Epic React, is I show that mechanism because that's what you do more often. So cool. Feel like I need to see it 3 times and then write it from scratch. That's what Epic React is about. Yeah. I have subscribed but didn't get mail. Zubair, if you just email me at hello@kentcdodds.com and let me email. From the email that you're subscribed to, then I can look into that for you. Okay, really like prop getters. It's awesome. Would I use them in these examples? Potentially. So like one of the things that prop getters is useful for is I have a use case where I typically am rendering this type of an experience, this type of a UI, and when people render this type of a UI, they need these different props for accessibility purposes or to automatically label things or whatever. So that's where prop getters comes in. I don't. There may be actually a use case because there are some ARIA attributes that you might want to apply to the accordion button, for example. And so here you could take the get button props and get contents props, and then apply those to those different components. Yeah, just not enough time to cover all of that stuff in the time that we have. But I do cover it in Epic React, so there's that. Yeah, Horacio, that's a pretty like good rule. I'm sure you're not dogmatic about that, but that's yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll take a look at other options for streaming to avoid this OBS nonsense. 10% code reduction. Nice. Okay. Nice. Okay. Well, thank you. I do invest a lot of time in it. I've got more blog posts. I've got one coming out on Thursday and another on Monday, and then I think I've got a couple more blog posts that I need to write before the launch. So, yeah, I write a lot. Okay, if we have a single state containing open index, wouldn't that work? So if you just did like a use state, you could probably do this with the use state. The challenge would be the reducer prop or the state reducer would be a little bit more tricky, but you can make that work. Yeah. Price has not been revealed yet. It will be revealed when the day comes, when it's released. I can tell you that the pricing structure is very similar to testing JavaScript. I can also tell you that there's way more content than is in testing JavaScript, and so it will be more expensive. And I can also tell you that in the first 24 hours of the launch, you'll get the biggest discount. It's a huge discount for that first 24 hours. So you'll want to get it on that first day. A pip of my camera. Ooh, interesting. Maybe I'll take a look at that. Is there a place where we can get React snippets with actual usable code? That sounds cool. I don't know of anything like that. How do I keep that pace? Well, let's be clear. I'm not building a product. I don't have like a day job. This is my day job. But if you want to look at what I did when I did have a day job, I wrote this blog post when I had a day job, and it kind of explains how I was productive during that time and lots of how I'm productive now. Do you think there are useful cases where you combine reducers that multiple things based on a single action? Or is that a bad design? I don't think so. I think there are legit cases for that combined reducer function. Yeah. So I don't think that the combined reducer function idea is bad. I just haven't actually used it. So take that under advisement, I guess. Yeah, so Mustafa, if you subscribed here, then that's great. You will get an email when things are real and legit. By the way, there are a bunch of people in the Kent Live channel. You don't need to be there. I'm not streaming in there right now. I mean, maybe Rob's doing something, I guess. That's cool. You're welcome to hang out in my voice channels and chat with each other. That's cool. Okay. Will the subscription be a one-time or a regular period license? It is a one-time buy, and it's yours forever. The first day, there's a countdown timer on epicreact.dev. Just scroll down, and we have just over 8 days. So it's going to be great. There will be purchase power parity, or parity purchasing power, whatever. That will be on Epic React. So you'll get to choose which discount you want. And depending on where you're coming from in the country or in the world, you could have a very huge discount. So it just really depends. Just like on testing JavaScript. Is this workshop suitable for watching offline? You can download the videos. There are a lot of them. And yeah, there are lots. So if you decide to do that, then you'll want to like get a high-speed connection, download all the videos. And the workshop is suitable for coding offline as well. So that was very intentional. We are making HTTP requests, but I make it so that you don't have to be online for those to work. You don't even have to run a server. That's MSW at work. Ha! So it's really, I've tried to simplify it as much as possible while still make it realistic and make it so that you can work with it completely offline. Have I tried React Native? I have not actually built anything more than hello, Kent, in React Native. So yeah, there's that. I don't have any plans in the near future to do anything with React Native. It's cool. I think it's awesome. If I were to build a native app, like if I needed to build a native app today, I would absolutely use React Native, but I'm not, so I won't. So that's that. Okay, looks like we're running down on questions. I've got 4 minutes left, so I'm happy to hang out for the next 4 minutes. If anybody has any other questions about patterns or whatever else, while I'm waiting for those questions to roll in, let me just give you a little preview of what patterns you've got at your disposal here. So we've got advanced React patterns. And we're back. Hello again. Okay, so close. Yeah, so I'll just give you a quick preview. We've got context module functions. This cool thing that I learned from Dan about the way that they manage their context and utility functions and stuff at Facebook. It's pretty cool. Compound components, love them, and how to make those flexible. There are use cases for both. So we've got both prop collections and getters, and the state reducer that I showed you, and then control props. Super powerful. And each one of these is like a set of an intro video, the actual solution. Sometimes the solution takes multiple videos, and then a bunch of extra credits, which sometimes can also be multiple videos. So you got plenty of stuff in here that I can't wait for you to see. It's great. Okay, will the video include those from testing React course? Yeah, so let me just show you. This is a very common question. So we've got testingjavascript.com, and we have epicreact.dev. So Epic React has a bunch of stuff on testing React apps. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. So this build Epic React app is like no new stuff. There is actually a lot of new stuff in here, but it's like, now you learned all that stuff in isolation, let's build it in an app. And so you have lots of the same stuff that you've learned. See, we're still working on stuff. Lots of the same stuff that you learned in the previous workshops will be implemented in a real app in this workshop. And this one is like 4 workshops. So take this times 4, basically, or any of these times 4. This is how much content there is in there. But yeah, so you'll see we have compound components in here as well. So you'll see, okay, here's how you do this in an isolated, very contrived, so that you can just learn the concept. And now let's go learn it in a real world setting, now that you have a grasp on the concept. So that's cool and exciting. So the question was about testing. So we've got a bunch of stuff on testing in here. And then in the build React app, we have a bunch of stuff on testing there also. But it's not nearly what you have in testing JavaScript. Especially if you don't have experience with testing. I give you like, here's basically what testing is, but testing JavaScript will really help you understand what testing is. You build Jest in this first one, and then we're configuring a bunch of tools, which we do nothing of in Epic React. So there's no learning about how to configure tools. It's just using the tools that have been configured. This module right here, this is the one that has the most overlap with Epic React, but you still have more stuff in here than you do in Epic React. We have one thing about Cypress in Epic React. We have a whole module about Cypress in testing JavaScript. So, and then we have testing Node as well in testing JavaScript. So that's kind of where they're at as far as like similarities. And a fun thing is once you get an Epic React license, for the next couple days, you'll have a link at somewhere, I think at the bottom, with a special discount for testing JavaScript. So if you want to buy Epic React, and then for the next few days, if you're like, I really want to also learn testing super well, then you can get testing JavaScript at a pretty big discount. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay. How can I use MSW for local development? Do I need a cert? No, you don't. It doesn't. It's not actually running a server. It's pretty rad. It makes it really, really easy. So you can do it all locally, completely offline. Will ever be a bundle with all your courses? I don't have any. Excuse me. I don't have any plans for that. Maybe. But yeah, like I said, you can buy Epic React and buy it at a discount on the first day, and then you'll get a special discount for a couple days after you buy it for testing JavaScript. So I guess that's sort of a bundle. Can we know the price before launch? Nope, that's a surprise. Sorry. What are my opinions on best qualities to look for in new JavaScript employees? That's a great question to ask during my office hours. I'm kind of focused on Epic React right now. Need a tutorial on how I built the Epic React Dev page. Oh, you'll have to get that tutorial from somebody else because I didn't build the Epic React Dev page or the testing JavaScript page for that matter. This was built by some amazing folks, and very soon, hopefully, we'll have an about page that will tell you all the awesome people that that built all of the awesome stuff that you see on Epic React. It's great. I just made the content, and I do some marketing and email sending and stuff. Okay, well, I'm sold. Awesome, Ivan. Happy to hear that. 11, LOL. Oh, yeah, that's reference to this. We're still working on it. Yeah, building a React app, it's going to be great. So, like, I can't tell you how awesome this is. For my whole teaching career, I've been struggling with, okay, how do I make sure that it's not so contrived that you can't see how it applies practically, but contrived enough so that you're not distracted by all the domain-specific knowledge that you have to have for the example. And Epic React nails it because it's like, let's just do contrived stuff to learn the thing, and then let's do real-world stuff to apply the thing, and you get the best of both worlds. It's awesome. I'll take a look at this later, Carl. Thanks. We will not dive into tools at all in Epic React. That's intentional. I don't want you to worry about tools in an age where we have things like Create React App, Next.js, and Gatsby and Remix upcoming. Like, these things handle all the tool stuff for you. You just need to learn how to write React really well and build your product. So no, we don't talk about tools. Does Epic React contain TypeScript? No TypeScript today, but I do have plans to add TypeScript in the future. Plans, not promises. Yeah, hopefully someday in the future. Okay, that's it for me. That was a good time. Join me tomorrow. Let's see, what am I talking about tomorrow? I forget. So live streams, epicreact.dev/livestreams. And here you can join me when I talk about why you should never use shallow rendering. And actually, I'll pop that open because it is, I think that link is wrong, or there's something wrong. I'll have to take a look at that and update that. Yeah, that link's wrong. I'll fix that later. Yeah, it's coming up. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. And yeah, kind of a little bit on the controversial side, I guess. But I think most people are coming around to this. But I'm going to talk about why it's so important to avoid implementation details and stuff. It's going to be great. Okay, cool. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have an awesome time. Thanks for hanging out. I'll try to figure out the OBS problems later. And then, yeah, hopefully we don't have any more problems. Peace. See you tomorrow.